Hi! This time I wanted to talk about how you can use the movie A Dark Song as a source of ideas for scenarios and, well, I guess short campaigns would be a better way to use the concepts handled in the film. This is an occult horror film. It's based on some real elements from real occult philosophy. Even if you are not into that sort of thought current, I still hope that you will be able to use the ideas presented here as as excuses for some occult scenarios, especially now in October, in this time where horror role playing games are recommended because of Halloween, Dia de los Muertos, Samhain, etc. Okay, I think I should give you an introduction to the film and some technical details about it before we go into like the role playing game related aspects of the film, because it is quite realistic when compared to other occult films. Okay, A Dark Song is about mostly about two people undertaking a titanic endeavor, a very dangerous occult operation. I normally want to avoid mentioning the names of certain books because of how dangerous they are. But in this case, they make it quite clear in the movie, so I think it's better to inform you what that book represents, so that you do not, well, those that, for example, are curious about the occult and want to do some experiments know what they are potentially getting into. Because I've seen some people in throughout the years talk about this movie, but most of them are frauds when they listen to what they say and compare it to the material of the book and to occult philosophy in general. You can see that those people have never undertaken any sort of occult philosophy operation. Some of them have actually said that the movie is very faithful to the ritual that is being carried out in real life, but now it's completely different. So I'll try to do my best to give you like an accurate account or representation or details concerning the book used in the film. So they are using the book of Abramelin. This book is incredibly dangerous. It's one of the more famous grimoires. The book supposedly gives you a process to come into contact with your holy guardian angel. For those of you that do not know much about angels and demons, at least, rather, for those of you that only know about angels and demons as presented in religions rather than taking a more objective approach to the subject matter, I think it's easier to understand it as you could see it in cartoons or manga and comic books, that you see this little angel and this little devil. On each shoulder you have like this little angel that is supposed to be, you could consider it as the holy guardian angel. However, sometimes it is more psychological. I don't remember the exact name in English. In Spanish we call it the super yo. I guess you could consider like a more structured, more orderly aspect of yourself. And in English you have this, I forget the name, but it's kind of like the subconscious. The devil represents your subconscious, your inner desire, your more animalistic side. So when you are taking a decision, you see in those, like I said, cartoons and all of that, that a little angel and a little devil pop out, and the angel is like, no, you must not do that, it's going to be harmful or something like that, and the devil is going to like, do it, if it's pleasurable you should do it, and so you have like your holy guardian angel, let's put it like that, and your personal demon. So this book of Abramelin, it's a very dangerous Kabbalistic book. It uses Hebrew occult concepts from the Kabbalah. The Kabbalah is amazing as a philosophical approach to spiritual matters. And you can see some parallels between the Kabbalah and other traditions. That's because the Kabbalah is composed of Greek and Egyptian occult thought or philosophy. And for example, when you compare it to Germanic shamanism, you have both traditions have a tree, the tree of life in Kabbalah, Yggdrasil. Then we have Adam and Eve in Kabbalah, Aska and Embla. You have Adon in Kabbalah, Odin, vowel consonant in both of the words, Adon, Odin. So you can see many parallelisms. You can also find the rainbow, thunder, and even you can really extend yourself in a very complex study of all of those traditions. For example, you compare the runes. I'll see if I can find a video about that in a channel. You can compare the runes with Phoenician symbols. There are some very striking similarities. So yes, many traditions connect with each other. And in this case, the book of Abramelin, through Kabbalistic concepts, you're supposed to enter into contact with your holy guardian angel. Remember that video where I talked about grimoires, and I mentioned this guy that had been fooling around with a very specific grimoire that I didn't mention the name back then, and he almost killed himself by jumping out of the window when some demons supposedly attacked him in his room? That's the book. So even if you think that occult principles, or what you would say as real magic, does not exist, you could consider the book a psychologically taxing book that could easily make you lose your sanity. If it was Call of Cthulhu, the role-playing game, it will apply some very heavy penalties when it comes to your sanity check. Depends on the Call of Cthulhu or Realms of Cthulhu sort of RPG, right? But okay. So in this movie is all about that. Now, when it comes to some technical details, the movie is technically, in my opinion, the movie is quite perfect. The location, the actors, they were amazing. The sound, the music, the atmosphere, everything is so great. The camera angles, exquisite. I didn't like the ending. Oh yes, by the way, spoilers. There are going to be spoilers in this video. If you haven't seen the film, please watch it first. Or if you don't care about spoilers, then go ahead and watch this video. But I will reveal many things about the plotline, because that's how I can go really deep into the details, the philosophy of the movie. When it comes to the ending, it is sadly quite religious. Remember that a true occultist is not fooled by the dogma and doctrine of religions that have been used to manipulate people. You will notice how in many religions, they always have this prophet or messiah figure, and they make up so many things about the life of such a cult leader or individual so that they can manipulate people like that. Because otherwise, let's say that you would say that God did this or that. Well, God, he's absolute. He's the concept of everything, of the origin. You know, all-powerful, omniscient, omnipotent. So you cannot say that you know God. That is incredibly, stupidly arrogant, that you know everything about God. So because they cannot do that, they need an idol. They need Jesus or Muhammad or any idol. And they can tell you, oh, Jesus did this, Muhammad did that. So that people swallow all of those lies. And that way they try to emulate their prophet or their messiah. And you can make people act very like sheep. That's the way the pastors manipulate people, as if they were sheep. They make them submissive docile. They make them very weak. And when they need to carry out a holy war, then they take all of that repressed anger from the person and they apply it to the holy war. So sadly, the movie didn't manage to distance itself from a religious angle, but maybe you could say that was intentional to reflect the imperfections of the main characters. But like I said, technically the movie is great. Now, let's talk about the plot line, because it's quite complex in its symbolism. And I am going to give you ideas on how you can work that into an occult horror campaign or scenario. The movie starts presenting the main character, Sophia. She is a woman that is not very honest about why she is attempting the Abramelin process. She contacts this man by the name Joseph Solomon. And it's actually quite ironic that he's Solomon, that's his last name, because many of you know that Solomon was a powerful magician. He appears in the Bible. By the way, there are many people that do not know that the Bible is actually the Jewish Tanakh. Take a look at the Jewish Tanakh, and that's the Old Testament. They just slapped the New Testament as propaganda because they basically ripped off that particular piece of Kabbalah. Okay, so Sophia contacts Joseph Solomon, and she hasn't been exactly clear what she wants to do with the Abramelin ritual. So they meet up. You see this guy, well, Sophia, she looks like your typical middle-aged woman. And from the very start, and this is perfect for what the movie is trying to represent, when you take a look at Joseph Solomon, he looks so... It sounds very arrogant to put it like this, but he looks so unworthy, so unfit to carry out this operation. Imagine that you want to contact your holy guardian angel, what is perhaps the most pure and direct link to God, the closest that you will ever be, perhaps, to God. Perhaps. You would expect that an individual carrying out that process would be someone that has attained a certain purity, or that has undertaken a quest towards virtue, because I think that we can never achieve perfection. I think perfection is beyond us, but I think perfection is a goal to move towards. But you take a look at Joseph Solomon, and like I said, this is not a critique of the actor. The actor was amazing in representing that part, and let's say that he is out of shape, both physically and mentally. He's an alcoholic. You could say that he's a pervert. He's fat. He looks a bit more old, in my opinion. That he looks like 10 years older. He's bald. He needs glasses. And Joseph Solomon, supposedly, he tells Sophia that he has done the Abramelin operation 2 times. Now, maybe he is lying. You could say that he is correct and he was quite inept and never managed to make a true contact. But in my opinion, he is lying. Because if you were to contact your holy guardian angel, don't you think that you would end up correcting many of your imperfections, both in mind, in mind, spirit, and body? And there are many frauds out there. You can see many idols like Aleister Crowley. Many of you know about that. In Spanish, we call him brujo. I wouldn't call him a magician. I would call him like an evil sorcerer, and that's still quite questionable. Sometimes he supposedly cursed people so that they would die or something, and the person was fine. Maybe the person knew about magic and protected himself or herself, right? But he just take a look at how he ended. Overweight, bald, a drug addict with who knows how many sicknesses and illnesses of the mind and the body. You could say that he was directly and indirectly responsible for the deaths and downfall of a few people. You could say several, in fact. And there is a lot of disinformation, a lot of false truths handled about him because he's actually related to the Bush family, you know, from George W. Bush, and he's also related by blood to the Queen of England. Funny how the British royals actually hail from Germany. You can start to make the connections. I'm going to put a documentary about Aleister Crowley. I hope they didn't remove it yet here from YouTube, because they have been removing videos about Crowley, about the British royals, the presidents of the US, etc. You know that they are all into the occult. Just take a look at the US dollar, the symbols in the US dollar, the what do you call those in Washington? The Georgia guidestones? All of those things are there. Not to mention their degenerate ceremonies, their orgies, pretty wicked, foul sorcery stuff. So yes, when Joseph Solomon said that he actually was successful, twice successful in accomplishing the Abramelin operation, there's no other way to put it. It is bullshit. So okay, he starts to talk with Sophia about what she wants to do, and he asks the reason why. Why do you want to contact your holy guardian angel? And she says that it's because of love. Then he gets really upset, really angry, because he's now looking at her as some sort of like a person that thinks that through sorcery you can control or enslave someone to love you. That's not real love. That would be like kidnapping. So he gets really upset, and he's almost about to reject her because she's willing to pay. It is obvious that she's probably rich, that she's going to pay a lot of money for him to help her with that ritual, because she knows nothing at all about ceremonial magic, nothing about Kabbalah, zero, nothing. But then she says that it's about love because her son died. I don't remember, because I watched this movie a few years ago. I don't remember if at first she tells him that her son died or was killed, because the son was actually killed, and you will see later on how that throws a wrench into the whole thing. But she tells him that her son died, and she wants to contact him. That's why it's because of love. That ceremony is related to love, because she wants her holy guardian angel to help her get into communication with the spirit of her deceased son. He was just a child, very sad in the movie. So then Joseph Solomon has a change of heart and decides to help her. Now let's take a look at things from the RPG angle. This is great because you could start the first scenario with the player characters locating someone who helps them to do this Abramelin operation. Maybe you could handle it a bit more complex, as they are searching for clues, looking at websites, talking with different people in real life, trying to find out if there is someone. That is, they could look in the virtual world and the physical world, if there is someone that is willing to help them. Depending on how combat heavy or pulpy the game is, maybe they will have to fight someone until they finally encounter this individual. I would say it's better to handle it as a shady or dubious individual like Joseph Solomon, that maybe that person is a charlatan and that he only wants your money, or maybe he's a true connoisseur of these processes and he decides to help the player characters. Okay, so Joseph accepts to instruct Sophia in the operation, and the first thing is that they need to purchase a house to carry out the entire process. This is one of the few similarities with the Abramelin operation. You need a very specific structure to carry out the work, and where you need to sleep and eat. So unless you already have a property matching those circumstances, you will need to either modify the property or purchase an entire new place. So she, because she is rich, quite easily purchases a really big house for the operation. This is a very creepy part of the movie. Those that do not know about the whole Abramelin process, they may not get a bit too scared. But those of you that know about it or that have undertaken the operation or tried to do it, you know that that house is going to turn into another dimension, so to speak. A place where many different entities have a passageway into. It turns into this sort of cosmic highway. And you're going to be spending a lot of time there. So immediately, Joseph Solomon encircles the area, the house, with, I think he used salt. He created a circle of salt. And so now the space is supposed to be protected, although that depends a lot on the virtue and the purity of the practitioner. If the practitioner is not searching for virtue, if you do not have a virtuous approach, there is nothing that is going to protect you from the horrors that you are going to face. You really feel the tension that they won't be able to go out of the house. And here is where, in real life, the Abramelin operation was the downfall of many members of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. A lot of them had terrible deaths. All of those that carried out the operation, they didn't have happy endings. And that's because one of the leaders of the Hermetic Order, Mathers, but the entire order was corrupt from the start. It was based on fraud, saying that they had this mysterious woman that gave them this scroll that made them the inheritors of the legacy of the Golden Dawn, and she was like this Rosicrucian. But the letter was forged by one of the other leaders by the name of, if I remember correctly, Win Westcott. So they were quite roguish. And Mathers carried out a very poor translation of the Book of Abramelin. I think that Mathers is a perfect example of someone who starts out with very few resources. When they say that you got handed a very crappy hand in life, but instead of proving that you can rise above that, he just proved that through trickery and deceit and a very lackluster, mediocre approach, you prove that you actually belonged at that level. So very childishly, immaturely, he made this crappy translation. The ritual, many things were in error, but the biggest mistake, in my opinion, was the length of the operation. He made the translation as if it only lasted 6 months. And it lasts, if I remember, it was 18 months. So in the movie, the time is not that long. I don't remember how many months or weeks it was supposed to last, but they cannot leave the house. They had to buy everything beforehand. This also differs differs significantly from the real process, because in the real process you can still do some things outside the house, but they put some very strict restrictions, like you cannot engage in business practices. So you're either very well off from the start, or you need someone to carry out business for you. but you need to minimize, reduce your contact with the outside world entirely during the operation, or as much as possible. Not entirely, like you can never talk to anyone, but you have to really minimize things. And this is, believe it or not, many do not know that some consider the Abramelin operation to be like the pinnacle of the hardest things in occult philosophy, but no. There are even more excruciating, harder processes out there. There are some processes that require years of isolation and restriction and moderation, very ascetic. So, they create this sacred space, supposedly sacred space, by encircling the house with protective barriers. And just not to go too deep into all of the ritual processes in the movie, mostly because, like I said, I watched this a few years back. I don't remember all of the parts, but you can see many questionable things. The attitude of Joseph Solomon towards Sophia is very, like you would expect of the harshest or strictest martial arts instructor. He's always yelling at her and, how would you say, chastising her, like, do it right, like getting really angry at her, yelling and even breaking things when she has done something wrong. But again, I think this would be slightly justified, because there are some things that only through very rigorous training, only then can you overcome your ego to attain this Zen-like mentality, this point of tranquility. But Joseph Solomon is no example to follow. If he supposedly did the operation twice, why is he still an alcoholic? In the movie, if he doesn't drink, his hands shake. And there's also a part, and they never make it clear. I think it is, well, they never make it clear or explicit, but there is this part where he tells Sophia that she should get naked and he masturbates. So you could be thinking, oh, well, that's part of the ritual process. Well, like I said, this is differs completely from the Abramelin operation. And there are some practices, questionable practices, in my opinion, where they involve those discharges of sexual energy. Maybe in some operations, as a preparatory measure, maybe it applies, but I find it a bit impure, in my opinion. But okay. So you never know if that is part of the process of he just like got really horny, and because they are isolated, he cannot watch TV or use the computer or read magazines. Well, he probably got a bit too excited and needed something like just to let all of that out. But I mean, couldn't he just like wait a bit or not use someone else as your client, because she was his client. He was supposed to be like the instructor, so that doesn't give him the right to use her like a visual stimuli. Or at the very least, I don't know, maybe he simply cannot hold it in. Wouldn't it be better if he's such a powerful magician? Maybe he could have visualized her naked, and then he goes into another room to do his thing. So, okay. So they're still carrying out the operation. But something goes terribly wrong in the middle of it. Things start to go wrong. The rooms, it's obvious that the house is being taken over by demonic forces. There are rooms that are locked, and you must not open them, because now they are portals, they are gateways to beings that are not made of flesh. Beings living in a more subtle plane, existing in a more subtle plane. And they start to carry out this mischief. So Joseph immediately suspects that Sophia has not been honest. So he interrogates her, And she confesses that the real reason why she wants to do the Avramelin ritual is because she wants to get revenge on the people that killed her child. I don't remember if it was just like the a normal killing, if there is such a thing, or if the child was sacrificed in some sort of ritual. I think I don't remember that part, but if the child was sacrificed, maybe that's a part of a greater diabolical scheme of the demons to lure Sophia into error. But here's the thing, and this is what the way that I think. You can think whatever you like, but I think that in such a process, taking into account the fictional the fictional scenario presented in the movie, I don't think that her looking for revenge, which would be rather justice, is wrong, because those were bad people. They did evil things, and she was the one offended, not the that is, if you could call it an offense. She was the one attacked. They killed her son, and neither the government nor religion nor anyone can tell you the means that you should get revenge, that you should find justice. You could say, oh, well, one is revenge and one is justice, but by eliminating those individuals, not only do you punish them how they deserve, because you have this mind control in present times that the government decides who should be punished and when, and it's obviously being handled through money and politics. That is, if they get paid enough to keep someone alive, that person is going to escape the death penalty. Or if that person is within the, let's call it the new world, we wait a bit so that the algorithm doesn't detect this order, mafia. If you're in that mafia, Illuminati, Freemasons. If you do not know about the Freemasons, I am going to put a video in the description below. That movie cost the life of the director because he disclosed many things. But if you are in that mafia, you're always safe you have a get out of jail free card, because they are not going to attack one of their own. So she is in her complete right, in my opinion, on looking for a way to kill the ones that killed her son. But the impure thing is that she was not honest from the start. Maybe because, yes, she thought that Joseph Solomon was not going to help her. So one has to wonder if Joseph would have helped her if she asked for revenge. I think not, because he still seems a bit trapped within religion. And this is where the movie falls apart in plotline, in my opinion, when it comes to a more honest approach. If that was the intent of the director, of the writer, that those two people still didn't escape the dogma and doctrine of religion that control, then it is a good way to portray things. But you should forgive those that are worthy of forgiveness, not those that deserve to die. And you know who deserves to die. As much as they want to tell you that, no, you cannot choose. If they killed your son, you can choose. So yes, don't fall into that trickery, that deceit. So now she needs to undergo a sort of purification process, very gross process, in which she has to consume certain substances and very questionable things that probably could get you sick. And he even kills her and resuscitates her. He basically drowns her. It's like a monstrous baptism in which he drowns her, and then he resurrects her. And she manages to come back alive. She comes from the dead, from the realm of the dead. And she gets really angry at him, of course, because he killed her. And in the struggle, in the fight, she accidentally, well, maybe it's something else, and we will see why. Let's say she accidentally pushes him into a knife, and he stabs himself with the knife, with the sharp kitchen knife. It's obvious that it's going to get infected. They are away from civilization. It doesn't look like the place has a lot of hygiene. Remember that taking a bath or finding some way of shower, like keeping yourself clean, is very important, because otherwise bacteria forms on your skin. Now, this doesn't necessarily involve water. As I've told you many times, because I do sun gazing, I only take a shower once a week. The rest of the days, I take a daily sun bath, and you can look for the properties of sunlight and how it purifies your body. So I get almost half naked in the sun, and it burns the bacteria. And it's really good for, in general, for everything, in my opinion. It's just like the warriors of old that they say, oh, look at those Germanic warriors. They were so dirty because they only showered once a week. But that's because they were constantly exposed to the elements. They were constantly being kept fresh and clean from fungi and bacteria because of the sunlight, because of the fresh air. You can also use other things like ash in an emergency, because remember, those people are kind of like isolated. I don't know if they well, they do have an access to take a shower and all of that, but maybe in some more extreme processes, when you need to live like in a cave or something, maybe you need to either prepare just like a place to keep water, clean water, fresh water, or you could use other things like I said, ash, or things to eliminate bacteria. But in this case, they don't look very hygienic, very clean, and it is obvious that because of the wound, he is going to get infected and he's potentially going to die, and that's what happens later on in the movie. Now let's take a moment to see how you could work this into... Oh, by the way, because this video handles some very sensitive concepts, remember that I have a backup channel in Odysee. You never know with YouTube censorship. If this video is taken down, you can take a look at my channel in Odysee. The link will be in the description below, because they have taken several related videos concerning to World War II, Kabbalah, etc. So, okay. When it comes to a role-playing game scenario, once the player characters find someone who can help them, you could make it part of the adventure to find a suitable location for the ritual process. That could be, like I said, an adventure by itself. It could be like scenario one, find the person that could help you carry out the ritual. Scenario 2, or maybe you don't need to find the person, maybe find like a scroll or a book or whatever. Scenario 2, find the location to carry out the operation. And then you can insert all sorts of creepy encounters, because like I said, throughout the movie, these rooms start to become populated by demons. They try to trick Sophia, making all sorts of disturbing noises. If I remember correctly, one demon pretends to be her son, and she must not open the door. And this is where the movie starts to become quite horrifying, because Solomon starts to get really sick. Joseph Solomon. I'm constantly making that difference, because remember that Solomon is the magician in the Tanakh, the Bible. But Solomon also had some questionable things. The ways that he interacted with demons, many aspects of his personal life, including his children, you can see that he was not a good person, in my opinion. They say that he was so wise. He must have been wise for some very specific things, but in general, he also got defeated by a demon once in a very disgraceful way. The way that he handled things with his lovers and his children, I don't have a very high opinion of Solomon, to be frank. So, well, this Joseph Solomon, you can see the arrogance that is born of, sadly, of many so-called occultists or ceremonial magicians. You see them everywhere. In his delirium, he starts to say things like, I don't know the exact things, but it was like something about that I have defeated the who knows what entities, and I am, like, he was basically comparing himself to a god or something, when he's a fat, bald guy that has problems with he's an alcoholic, he's probably a pervert, he hasn't been able to fix his eye problems. If he's such an expert, why did he end up getting stabbed like that. He was actually pleased with when he got stabbed because he told Sophia that that was the a symbol, a sign that yes, a sign that the holy guardian angel had protected her. That is, her holy guardian angel saw her struggling like in this sort of, what would you say, scuffle, wrestling with Solomon when she got really angry at Joseph. And so the holy guardian angel supposedly caused him to stab himself with the knife. Maybe, who knows? At least according to that fiction. If he was such a powerful magi, why didn't he know the most basic ways of healing such a wound? He should have had knowledge of many antibacterial things, like, well, I would have treated it with colloidal silver. You could have also used a substance that they don't want you to tell what it is here in YouTube. Let's say the separate components, so that the algorithm doesn't catch this. It's a combination of vitamin C with, I don't know how you say it I think it's, in Spanish it's clorito de sodio, but in English I think it's sodium chloride. If you manage to understand the proportions to combine those two things, that's a very almost miraculous, it doesn't treat everything, but it's quite miraculous in its antibacterial and antiviral properties. The people who were informing viewers here in YouTube about that, they had their own channel and YouTube took it down, of course, because YouTube wants to get everyone sick. Okay, Joseph Solomon would have had the knowledge to heal himself, but another failure, and he eventually dies from the infection. His corpse is eventually dragged into the basement of the mansion, which represents like the more dangerous, darkest connections to a subplane of hell, I would say. I was a bit disappointed by the appearance of the demons in the movie. I don't think they were horrifying enough. You could say that it was because of the budget of the film, right? But I would have preferred more practical effects to better represent those creatures with all sorts of deformities and parts of monstrous animals instead of human features. And yes, all of those disgusting things as well. There are some that look very majestic as part of the vibration that they are projecting, but some others look really disgusting. Perhaps more corpse-like, yes, more corpse-like, sorry. And you didn't see that in the film. They were somewhat scary, but they could have done so much worse. Or better. So yes, this is a good excuse in a scenario or campaign to, I think you could treat it as a sort of mega dungeon. Maybe it's a very large house and the characters have to undertake different operations at different parts of the house against demons and ways to purify themselves, to enter into contact with some higher entities, or to go up the tree of life. Or depending on the tradition, right? Maybe they are focused a bit more on Germanic tradition, Germanic spirituality, and maybe they are exploring the realms of Yggdrasil. That are contained within the tree. So I think that's a good thing about the movie when it comes to details. Like I said, it is completely different from the real operation, but it's really cool how they added these different circles on the floor. They had to create these diagrams, these patterns and arrangements where Sophia is basically meditating on different concepts, getting into harmony with those higher spheres. Eventually, Sophia is at a breakdown, at the lowest point, because she no longer has Joseph Solomon as a guide. She doesn't know what to do. She has no clue whatsoever. And he didn't leave something behind that gives you proper instructions on how to complete the ritual process. She gets captured by the demons, pulled into the basement, and they strap her to a chair and they start to torture her. They even cut off one of her fingers. And when she gets into this really... It's a very pathetic attitude, in my opinion. That's something that differs completely from a real occult operation. As you try to become virtuous, as you try to purify yourself from all that could be considered a flaw or an imperfection, you're supposed to reach this state of purity where you could look at the most horrifying of demons and you would be unmoved, or perhaps even moved towards love. Like I said, a divine hate. In my other video, remember that I said that you could also develop a divine hate? As someone who has survived some dangerous situations and as a martial artist, I can tell you, if you want to be successful at a confrontation with any situation, with anyone, in my opinion, according to my experiences, when you can smile at your enemy, almost in a loving way, but you still have that attitude of, I am going to destroy you and I'm going to enjoy it. If you have that attitude, it's so terrifying for your enemy, because you have reached that point where you can actually draw pleasure from the confrontation. Many psychopaths have an advantage in combat because they draw pleasure from harming others. Anything that you do in life, you do it better if you take pleasure from it. Just think about different things that you have to do in life, maybe related to your job or to your hobbies. When you find enjoyment in what you do it better, or you improve upon it. So when you reach that state, you are now a master of your darkness. You are a good person because you have that capacity of loving decent people, kind people, your loved ones, your friends, your family, even strangers. When you first meet them and they haven't done anything bad to you, you have that capacity of loving them. You know, not like in a non-degenerate way, you know, like almost, yes, like human warmth. But you can take that love and turn it around towards violence, towards the destruction of your enemy, to the point that you could see your enemy destroyed. You could see the bones of your enemy broken, the flesh of your enemy torn apart, and you could still smile. It sounds quite psychotic, like, how could you do that? But when you reach that point, you go beyond that. That's how you see those images of angels when they are fighting demons. You see this demon being squashed under the foot of an angel, and the angel is kind of like quite tranquil. That doesn't mean that you won't express fury and anger during the confrontation, but you feel quite comfortable and tranquil at the same time. That's how you can emit this explosive burst of violence and rage, because it doesn't feel bad, it feels very natural. So I think that Sophia lacked all of that. She didn't have any of that when she was basically begging for mercy, that she was sorry for what, that she was wishing the death of the ones that killed her son. And then, and this is the more unbelievable part of the movie, I don't think your holy guardian angel, well, based on certain things, the holy guardian angel would never present itself to you if you act like that. That's very weak, extremely weak. But here, oh, suddenly there is this current of light, and all the demons get scared because of the light, and Sophia climbs up the stairs, a sort of symbolism of her ascension. And she reaches this room, and you see this huge angelic figure. I think that's one of the coolest parts of the film, the depiction of this angel as this sort of giant. I always got the impression, because that's part of the Holy Guardian Angel philosophy. The Holy Guardian Angel is supposed to be an aspect of yourself, a higher aspect of yourself. So I think it represented like just like a perfected version of Sophia. And here I also really like the way that the angel communicates with Sophia. It communicates at a level of vibration. And I think a lot of people fail, that is, people that are into spirituality and such, fail to communicate with different entities or higher powers, if you will, if you would refer to them like that, because they try to talk to them as we talk with other humans, as I am talking to you with words. But I think the communication, the interaction happens at a level, a more subtle level, a level of vibration. A vibration that is later on translated to words. So the angel communicates kind of like in this vibration. You cannot hear the clear words from the angel. And then Sophia, in a very disappointing religious twist, she could have asked anything of her holy guardian angel. Anything. And you know what she asks for? The ability to forgive. Oh my God. That's why the world is in such a mess right now. So many things that could be carried out to improve this life that is in so much need of heroic people. She could have asked for the forces of good to triumph over evil or something. Oh, I want forgiveness for the ones that killed my son. And that's how the movie ends. The demons are exorcised. She goes down into the basement and retrieves the corpse of Joseph and gives him a sort of water burial. And she leaves the house driving away crying. The end. That's why I say that's quite disappointing from a more sane occult perspective, a more sane occult way of looking at things. It was a complete waste. Joseph even lost his life so that she could contact her holy guardian angel. Of course, I would recommend that you change the ending if you are turning this into a sort of scenario or campaign. And that also makes you wonder if Joseph was successful in the other two operations. According to him, what did he ask for of the holy guardian angel? Couldn't he have asked of not being an alcoholic or being a better person? Or if he was more virtuous, carrying out, yes, even greater plans? I'll leave that to your imagination. What would you have asked of your holy guardian angel? Okay, now let's talk about how this would be a bit more realistic if you want to handle it more low fantasy in your tabletop RPG session or campaign. First of all, the demons. In a real occult operation, the demons are not going to be as tangible. They mostly attack the mind. In fact, if you were to take a more sober approach to the film, maybe when she saw the demons, when Sophia saw all of those creatures, all of those entities, maybe it was only her mind. Maybe they never pulled her into the basement. Maybe she went running like a crazy person into the basement, sat in a chair and cut off her own finger. That would make a lot more sense. In many cases, in real life cases that they say, oh, that person, the demon took that object and moved it to the other part of the room. There are some so-called evidence of poltergeist activity, but in most cases, it is obvious that the person was being controlled by some entity, and he took the object and placed it in another room, and then that person couldn't remember doing that because she was being controlled by something else. If you don't think those entities exist, you could say that the person was crazy, and in her madness or his madness, he did something and then that person doesn't remember. It is curious. In the Middle East, there is a word, I don't remember the word, but the word that means crazy person is also used to refer to someone possessed by demons or by jinn. So I think, as they refer to them over there, that there is an interesting connection. Now, when it comes to creating that sacred space, or like a dimensional space, in the movie they make it clear that you cannot abandon the area once the circle has been set. She tries to escape and she cannot do it. It's kind of like those time space displacements. But in real life, I would say that if you were to leave a certain area that you consecrated, and according to any process, not just the Abramelin process, any ritual process, you needed to remain within a circle or within a structure or whatever. If you went out, I don't think something as extraordinary would happen. Who knows? There could be some instances, but in most cases, you're going to suffer something related to perhaps your health or your money, your personal life. When you feel like the entire world falls over you, or like your life starts to what would you say, crumble, just to be your life ends up being destroyed. That's the sort of thing that will happen. That a succession of unfortunate events start to occur. Now, concerning the Holy Garden Angel, well, it's interesting. I think it depends on the individual. It could take many different forms. But just it's such a waste that she asked for that wish. Because she could have asked for many other things. Now, some of you may be curious as to how you could represent a more realistic scenario or campaign concerning the whole Abramelin method. Well, that book, let me tell you some things about those sorts of books. A lot of them, if not most of them, are cursed. So, unless you know how to safekeep those books, you're pretty much screwed. There is a certain book, and I want to avoid the name of that book, but if someone suddenly decides to give you a book, be wary of someone that just maybe that person disguises the book as a book of something else. Oh, it's a book about mythology or short stories or whatever, and you kind of get that feeling that there's something fishy. There are some books that if you are gifted those books, you cannot reject them. If you reject them, there are terrible consequences. Now, why would a person give away that book? Because the book is cursed, and although you can learn some things from that book, even use some parts of those flood operations, in my opinion, of those flood operations, the demons start to supposedly, let's say, hunt down the possessor of those books. So that person obviously wants to get rid of the book by handing it down to someone else. And in my opinion, just taking a look at the different people who have possessed the book of Abramelin, I think the book is cursed. The book, in my opinion, rather than being Jewish or of a more Kabbalistic nature. Now I'm going to say something that I hope the YouTube doesn't take down this video. But let's say the religion that Hebrew people are supposed is commonly portrayed as maybe if I say it in Spanish, Judaismo, as Judaismo is being represented, that's not a real Kabbalistic tradition. That is actually a satanic version, a distorted version of Kabbalah. It is Sabbatean. I'm going to put 2 Odysee related videos so that you can see those. You know the stereotype of an evil person of that certain tradition? That's not a Jewish person. That is a Sabbatean. That's basically a Satanist disguising himself or herself as a Jewish person through Judaismo. Okay, Robert Sepper, a channel that has some there are some questionable videos, but some videos I think are the most accurate when it comes to communicating information that the mainstream doesn't want you to know. And I personally don't like Robert Sepper too much. In my opinion, he's obviously a narcissist. You can just take a look at those intros in all of those videos. Anyone who understands body language and all of that, oh my god. But despite what I would consider some very obvious things about him, some of his material is pretty good. And he had this video where he made the connection between World War, the second war, with Sabbateans, and you start to make sense of the whole thing with the thing that starts with like a hologram caustic. Let's call it the caustic hologram. That killing of many people. You start to see why they were hunting down those people and putting them into those camps, because those were a lot of them were authentic practitioners that did not accept this satanic approach to Judaism as it exists as a religion today. You know, that involves the mutilation of penises. Don't ever take your baby so that they cut off that part of the penis. You're going to scar him for life, psychologically and physically. It's so sad. In sex, it's so pleasurable to have your complete thing, and if someone cuts off the tip, you'll never experience that real pleasure. Just take a look at those people that suffer that mutilation. They are constantly they are not in control of their anger. They are frustrated, depressed. And it also causes infection. There is a reason why you have that piece of skin over your penis, because it protects the penis from infection. So yes, going back, I think the Book of Abramelin was written by someone, curiously, Abraham von Worms. Abraham is telling you, or Abraham, that Abraham von Worms, the author of the book, he doesn't seem like a good person. He basically has this sort of supremacist approach that basically calls anything that is not, according to him, Jewish, anything that is not supposedly kosher, for him it is crap. It is the trick of the devil. So if you explore the mysteries of Thor or Thunar and all of those gods, or maybe you are more on the side of the Celtic tradition with Carnunos and the Ogham. Oh no, because it's not Jewish. Sorry, that's the thing, something from the devil. So it's very dishonest in my opinion on him. I think he was more in league with the devil. So the process detailed in the book is quite imperfect, maybe accidentally imperfect, intentionally imperfect, but if someone actually wants to find out if there is something supernatural, he should attempt to use one of those cursed books. I don't say, or rather, excuse my choice of words, he could consider attempting those things, but I must warn you that it could ruin your life. It could ruin your soul. Even if you die, you could be hunted down on the other side by those entities. You could fall victim to a curse that could affect entire generations of your family. So you have to think if it's worth the risk. There are only very few people who can approach those processes unharmed. And yes, the things that you are supposed to obtain through the communication with your holy guardian angel, they are quite incredible. They have to do with power. But here is where I think many people fall under a superficial approach or materialistic or Marxist approach. Many misguided people, in my opinion, think that success is about being as shallow and superficial as you can, having lots of money and fame and indulging in all sorts of vices. Just take a look at all of those people that are supposedly famous and rich. They always die from terrible things. They immediately rot away. Take a look at those evil people, Rothschild, Rockefeller. Just take a look at how they look and at their how they deteriorate. And all of those actors and actresses and singers and people in Hollywood, their life is a complete mess. They have all of those things and their life is a complete mess. Real power comes more subtly, in my opinion. Let me give you a sort of example. Many books, including Abraham Mellin, they supposedly they could grant you armies. Now, what does this mean? Does it mean that you suddenly go through a particular step of the process and suddenly like an army of demons gets summoned? Wow, they appear out of nowhere, like if you call them with a Magic the Gathering card or Yu-Gi-Oh or whatever. No. But suddenly you find the ways of manipulating or perhaps even directly ordering an entire group, your army, to do something for you. Maybe you can even pit two groups against each other, or several groups. In the case of Solomon, he supposedly commanded armies and all of that, armies of demons to build his palace and all. Well, I don't think he manifested demons out of nowhere. Rather, he obtained some sort of way of possessing a large group of people, perhaps of workers in the case of building his palace, do his bidding. So for example, the Freemasons, when they started to create the United States, they needed slaves. They obviously did some sort of ritual based with that had to do with demonic pacts, and to obtain those slaves, they actually found the means to go to Africa and purchase those slaves from that is, a lot of people want to say that there are no slave masters in Africa, but those people in Africa of the same color as their own people, they sold people of their same color to the Freemasons, and then they took them here to America. So that's one way in which the ritual works. It works more on a more mundane, more practical level. And that's what you have to understand. Many could attempt the different processes of different grimoires, etc. And they end up disappointed because they didn't end up summoning something as it was some sort of video game. In my opinion, it's much better to study the sources. That is, the more spiritual and sacred documents that have sadly been hijacked by religion. They were taken away from their true philosophical roots. But if you study those secret and ancient texts, and you identify the codes, remove all of the religious propaganda, I think you have a much better chance of developing your own spirituality to produce what you would say miracles. That's my opinion. A lot of you know. Maybe a lot of you are already aware that a lot of, for example, the Bible, the Jewish Tanakh, it is written in code. Some people literally think that there are talking snakes that give you apples from trees. And no, you need to pierce the code and understand what all of that means in a certain procedure. So, in your occult role-playing game scenarios and campaigns, you can handle this however you like. I just gave you these pointers and my opinion how you could handle things. I think it could be a very fun scenario or short campaign, or depending on how you handle it, it could be even longer. Going through that entire process of the player characters, finding some sort of teacher or mentor to carry out the ritual, or finding a book that tells you the instructions, finding the site, the structure, the mansion, or whatever, depending on the scenario. Maybe it's a science fantasy role-playing game and you're carrying out the process in a futuristic building or whatever. All of the rooms inside of the chosen building or structure could have different encounters. As the ritual progresses, rooms that seem to be unaffected suddenly become quite haunted, like in Silent Hill 4, The Room. A really good example of haunted rooms and wandering like undead things is in the Cursed Chateau. I reviewed that one some time ago. You can find it in my channel. Just use the little. I'll see if I can find it. You know, if not, you can always find it in the little, how you call it, the magnifying glass in my channel. The Cursed Chateau, like in France, in French, like castle, chateau or mansion rather. Yes, mansion, right? Okay. You have some good examples on how to handle those sorts of encounters, and at the end of the scenario, maybe you can have a really big boss fight. Maybe the entire process was a scam, and it was not to summon the angels of the characters. Maybe it was to summon a very powerful demon, and they need to fight that demon. Or maybe the characters do connect with the Holy Guardian Angel, and they get rewarded with a lot of experience points or new spells or abilities or whatever you like. So yes, I hope you found this video entertaining. I know a lot of you could consider this like pretty crazy, but I still hope that you will find this information, like I said, as inspiration for your own scenarios, campaigns, etc. Thank you for watching, and thank you so much to those of you that have been supporting the channel by sending drive-through RPG gift certificates. If anyone else wants to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. Once again, thank you, and please let me know if you have more ideas for scary, macabre, or occult related things. For this month of October, you know, I have been producing these scary themed videos. I have like a couple of ideas on upcoming videos, but I definitely would appreciate it if you could propose more subjects or themes or whatever. Scary related things that you could use in your role-playing game campaigns and scenarios. Once again, thank you. See you later.